Single dad's touching journey. Hired a babysitter for his twins' incredible secret revealed. Jake stared at the stack of math papers on his desk, the fluorescent lights casting a dull glow on the crumpled assignments. He was exhausted. Emma and Lily's laughter echoed from the living room, a reminder of the joy dancing just outside his weary reach. But all he felt was the weight of his responsibilities, pressing down like the unyielding stack of quizzes awaiting a grade. He tugged at his collar, wrestling with thoughts of how to give his daughters the childhood they deserved while barely scraping by as a teacher. Doubt churned in his stomach. Am I doing enough? He thought, fighting down the rising tide of inadequacy. It was in this moment that he made the call to Sarah, bright, optimistic Sarah, a college student studying psychology. The idea of hiring a babysitter had felt like admitting defeat, as if welcoming judgment and pity to his already beleaguered life. Yet as he watched Emma and Lily wrestle with a complicated puzzle and struggle to keep it together, he realized that he couldn't keep up with their energy and needs forever. And so he hesitantly committed, an act of surrender he thought would mean giving up the last vestiges of control in his life. When Sarah arrived, it was as if a light flickered on in the dim corners of his days. Her easy rapport with his daughters was a breath of fresh air, one he desperately needed. They delighted in cooking simple meals and playing games, with Sarah encouraging the twins at every turn. In moments of quiet, she would share snippets of her own life, moving from foster home to foster home, never quite feeling at home anywhere. Jake's heart swelled with empathy. Here was someone who understood the chaos his daughters could bring. Gradually, she became an unexpected ally, boosting his confidence as a father. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The warmth faded, however, when the mounting stress of bills and expenses struck hard. A better-paying job opportunity landed in his lap, one with long hours far from home and eyes fixed on the corporate ladder. The allure of stability and relief for his girls grew stronger, tempting him to forget his current worries. But guilt wrapped around his heart like a vice as questions chased each other through his mind. What kind of father sacrifices time for coins? As he weighed decisions, a sudden realization gripped him. Sarah, with her stories of instability, mirrored his deeper fears. What if he stepped into that new role only to lose sight of the girls? He could feel the murmurings of hope from his resurgence in teaching backfiring into despair. The thought of abandoning the girls first for profit and then possibly for a life devoid of familial connection threatened to tear him apart. But just when he felt the strain peak and teetering on the brink of a choice, the doorbell rang. An unexpected visitor loomed outside, a figure from his past, ready to shatter the fragile house they had built. Who was it? And what truths lay buried beneath the surface of his family's history? The tension bubbled to a climax, the kind Jake had desperately tried to evade. Jake's heart raced as he opened the door, bracing himself for an altercation. An unwelcome memory, but when he saw the familiar face, all his earlier tensions surged back with overwhelming force. It was his estranged brother, Mark. The years of silence hung heavily between them, like an unbearable weight. Mark wore a sheepish expression, vulnerability flickering in his eyes, but Jake felt betrayal seeping through his veins. What are you doing here? Jake's voice was more defensive than he meant it to be. He glanced instinctively over his shoulder. Sarah was in the kitchen with the twins, blissfully unaware of the family storm brewing at their doorstep. I need to talk, Mark said, his voice low but pressing. Can we step outside? Talk about what? Jake replied, firmness punctuating the question. The distance had been measured in years, decisions, and ultimately, pain. But something in Mark's posture, the slight slump of his shoulders, the uncertainty in his stance spoke of deeper struggles, perhaps even an understanding of what it meant to sacrifice in the name of family. Shaking his head, Jake felt a tension he couldn't explain. I've got my girls to think about. This isn't the time for please. Mark interrupted, his eyes pleading. It's about Mom. Things have changed. That name hung in the air like an unresolved equation, its implications daunting. The last time they had discussed their mother, it had been a fractious exchange, bound in old grievances and painful truths. Moments from their shared past clashed vividly in Jake's mind, the days lost to bitterness. The familial ties that had once felt indestructible now frayed and fraught. Why now? Jake challenged, crossing his arms defensively. You're here to reopen wounds? To stir up the past like it was nothing? Mark, his gaze intense, took a breath as if each inhalation was laced with the weight of regret. Because if we don't address it, things will only get worse. You know that. And what do you think Mom would want? For a moment, Jake faltered. The internal conflict clamored loudly. He felt his heart pounding against the walls of his ribcage. Could he afford to entertain this shared past when his current responsibilities loomed like a specter? Yet, there was a flicker of curiosity sparking beneath his frustration. What if there was a truth here that could unlock something important? Okay, but let us make this quick. Jake relented, his voice steadying as the protective instinct for his daughters coursed through him. The twins are waiting. They stepped away from the door, the world around them shrinking as they settled on the porch. Mark took a deep breath, launching into a narrative fraught with familial chaos, long-held secrets, and grievances that had colored their childhood in shades of neglect. As Mark recounted their mother's declining health, a panic began to stir within Jake. What if the past he had fought so hard to escape was suddenly plummeting toward him? Through all of this, the ever-present thoughts of his daughters kept intertwining with the revelations, presenting an urgent dilemma. Could he be a father while wrestling with what he had tried to forget? Comfort ebbed away when confronted with the choice that loomed too large to ignore. The notion that history could repeat itself horrified him. Amidst the chaos of emotions, one thing became increasingly clear. Confronting Mark could mean confronting himself. But who would he be on the other side of this choice? This untangling of their shared past would not be simple, and the repercussions could ripple throughout his carefully constructed life with Emma and Lily. Jake drew in a sharp breath, the air thick with uncertainty. I need to know everything, but this isn't just about us anymore. Just as Mark nodded, preparing to divulge what he had held back for years, an unexpected voice shattered the moment. Daddy, we need help with the puzzle. Jake's heart sank. He was caught between two worlds, each demanding his attention and each held pieces of himself he wasn't sure he was ready to confront. As the door swung open, wider, he was left grappling with the question. Could he navigate these familial tensions without losing the bond with his daughters he so desperately cherished? The crossroads loomed before him, profound and unavoidable. The time had come for more than just words. It demanded action, and he wasn't sure whether he had the strength to face both. Jake, are you ready for the truth? Mark pressed, voice thick with urgency. He hesitated, feeling the weight of his answer unfurl like paper in water, unsure of what would emerge from the dissolution of his past guilt, shame, or perhaps even redemption. The pressure in Jake's chest intensified, but retreat was no longer an option. Mark's presence forced an urgency he hadn't expected, one that reminded him of the delayed conversations that had tainted their lives. As he wrestled with the complications of the moment, the voices of the twins echoed in his mind, calling him back to the present, grounding him, yet amplifying his internal struggle. Let us just talk, Mark, Jake finally managed, his voice strained. He ushered his brother off the porch, into the solitude of the shadowy yard. The evening air felt laden with expectation, mirroring the tense silence that grew between them. Mark shifted, the weight in his eyes deeper than before. Mom's illness is worse than we thought. She's in hospice care, he stated, the words tasting bitter as they left his lips. Jake's gut twisted. The mention of hospice brought an onslaught of memories, days filled with worry, nights spent awake listening for the phone to ring. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Anger and regret churned within him, fueled by years of alienation. I didn't know how, Mark admitted, looking down at the dew-kissed grass. I've been struggling with it all, just like you. But I thought this time could be different. His brother's despair was palpable, leaving Jake conflicted. Mark had walked away, severing ties at a time when Jake had desperately needed support. The accusation always dripped from their conversations like a slow poison. Mark's abandonment always hung in the air, unaddressed and unresolved. And yet, here they stood, a slanted bridge between shared pain and potential reconciliation. "I have my own family to think about now," Jake retorted, defensive yet painfully aware of his own hypocrisy. The weight of his daughter's innocence pressed heavily on him. "I know. I just thought you could maybe just help me navigate this." Mark's voice cracked, revealing a vulnerability Jake hadn't seen in years. He felt both the weight of responsibility and the flickers of an innate compassion begin to churn in his chest. A familiar lump formed in Jake's throat. "What do you need from me exactly?" His mind raced through cascading worries. Could his re-engagement with Mark undermine the growth he'd fought for as a father? Was he equipped to guide his brother while maintaining the emotional stability that his daughters needed? Recollections of their chaotic childhood seeped in unspoken words and harsh misunderstandings. Jake craved clarity, but every path forward stretched out like a maze without an exit. "Do you want me to help take care of her?" He finally laid bare, each word loaded with uncertainty. Mark nodded, inhaling sharply as if the air was thick with the unacknowledged. "Yes, and I need someone to talk to about everything. It feels like I'm losing her before I even get to say goodbye." For the first time since he had opened the door, Jake felt a flicker of empathy crack through his staunch defenses. Perhaps this was a chance for connection, an opportunity to reroute the rift between them. "I can't promise I'll do this perfectly, but I'm willing to try," he stated, steeling himself against the emotional turmoil stirring inside. They stood together, a fleeting truce forged in the twilight, yet Jake couldn't shake the nagging fear that every moment invested in addressing their shared past could siphon precious time away from his daughters. He would have to reconcile these conflicting priorities somehow. Mark's grateful smile broke through the heavy atmosphere. Jake felt both a budding sense of resolve and a web of trepidation entangle him more tightly. Was he sacrificing his stability for a chance to reconnect? The weight of that choice gnawed at him even further, leaving him to wonder if he could reclaim not only his brother's trust but also his own fractured identity. "Let us figure this out together," Mark said quietly, breaking the silence, and for the first time in years, Jake felt the faintest glimmer of hope. But as Mark walked beside him, an unexpected realization gripped Jake's thoughts fiercely. What if, by helping Mark, he would also unearth his own vulnerabilities, buried beneath layers of protection? The echoes of his daughter's laughter drifted in from the house, a stark reminder of what was at stake. The moment hung delicately in the air, and Jake knew that the path ahead was anything but simple. Confrontation awaited him not just with his brother, but with the parts of himself he had long tried to keep buried. As they stepped back towards the house, the truth echoed in his mind. Family bonds, once frayed, could be remade. With each step, though the path before him remained uncertain, a flicker of determination sparked within Jake. He was ready to face whatever truth awaited him. Yet, as the door swung open, the laughter of the twins reached him anew. Would he be strong enough to balance the growing complexity of his world? Would navigating this new territory unravel stability or, perhaps, reinforce the roots he had desperately sought to strengthen? And just then, a small voice piped up from the kitchen. "Daddy, can we talk about the secret?" Jake froze, heart pounding. One secret at a time. Could he handle more than he'd already uncovered? The stakes were rising, and he was utterly unprepared for what was about to unfold. The door creaked as Jake stepped inside, the high-pitched inquiry from one of his daughters still echoing in his mind. A whirlwind of emotions surged through him as the realities of his dual commitments and the uncharted waters ahead loomed large. He had just agreed to step back into Mark's world, a place fraught with unresolved resentment and deep-seated familial obligations, while simultaneously grappling with the innocence and needs of his own girls. "Daddy!" The twins chorused again, darting toward him with eager expressions. "Can we talk about the secret?" Their faces illuminated with curiosity, but Jake felt a shadow flicker across his heart. What kind of secret could they possibly be referring to? The anticipation hung heavily, more daunting than the conversation he'd just had with Mark. "Sure, sweethearts. What's up?" he said, trying to inject casual warmth into his tone as he knelt to their level. But inside, the pressing realities of Mark's acknowledgement and their mother's illness loomed like thunderclouds. They exchanged glances before Ella, the more adventurous of the two, took the lead. "The one we found. The treasure map." Her eyes glinted with excitement. Jake felt a momentary relief, but beneath the surface pressure still undulated. "A treasure map?" he repeated, feigning interest while grappling with the concept. Wasn't he every moment better spent preparing his daughters for a world outside their youthful innocence, rather than embarking on make-believe adventures? "Yeah," Zoe chimed in. "It's hidden in the attic, under the old blankets. Can we go look at it?" While their innocent enthusiasm contrasted starkly with his inner turmoil, Jake questioned if it was wise to indulge this whim. Managing the uncertainty surrounding Mark and the grief of their impending loss felt monumental. Yet he glimpsed a vital opportunity within their request. "Okay, how about this? Let us go check out the attic together," he found himself suggesting. A soft smile crept across his face as a slow warmth spread through him at their joy. As they sped ahead, Jake followed, his thoughts drifting back to his brother. This was the sort of moment he had craved to share, but with Mark as well, or was that just an illusion? Would immersing himself into this treasure hunt distract him from the graver realities of family and life that were too heavy to bear? Climbing the creaky attic steps, the scent of dust and forgotten memories met them with each rise. Here, Jake confronted not only the past with its cobweb-strewn corners, but also the future he felt so unprepared to face. As he rummaged through old boxes, feelings of resentment towards Mark began to resurface. Just as he had started breaking ground on their fragile connection, here lay remnants of their childhood, coated in neglect, a painful reminder of why he had distanced himself. "Look, Daddy! Found it!" Ella shouted, holding the ratty folds of an old blanket. And with that, a flash of longing gripped him as he marveled at their delight. Each shared memory layered on top of another could offer a foundation to rebuild both with his daughters and with Mark. "Let us see what treasures we can find," he encouraged, feeling a new sense of purpose. The children beamed, and he could see it the light-hearted play serving to tether him back to the present, back to what truly mattered. Yet, as they tucked themselves beneath the canopy of dusty blankets, an underlying tension brewed. He felt the weight of yet another secret gathering within him, a dual responsibility. Would he eventually have to reveal Mark's reality to the twins? How would that affect their innocence? The attic felt like a permanent holding chamber where shadows of old truths waited, silently observing. What lessons would he be imparting as he led his daughters into a place where imagination took flight, while the anchor of grief tried relentlessly to pull him down? Just then, as Jake lost himself in thought, Ella tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, can you tell us a secret about your brother?" His heart sank. The moment had unfurled into a dilemma he wasn't ready to tackle yet. Could he hide the truth forever? Or would revealing something about Mark lead him closer, despite the tumult it held? A new weight pressed on him, a blend of being a protective father and a fractured brother. In that fleeting moment, Jake realized the challenges of navigating familial loyalty, grief, and his daughter's blossoming curiosity could expose vulnerabilities he wasn't ready to confront. As the attic enveloped them in its luminous memories and dusty corners, Jake faced the raw breadth of everything unraveling around him, and a realization gripped him. Secrets could either bind or break him. I need to think about that," Jake finally breathed, caught between the innocence of the moment and the deep complexity lying just beneath its surface. The shadows danced around him as questions spiraled. How would he confront the challenges of the heart while steering so many towards their own truths? The uncertainty settled heavily as they stood together, Jake's heart racing, tethered between two worlds on the brink of collision. What new revelations awaited him in the echoes of family ties that still bound them all? Jake's thoughts spiraled as he attempted to bridge the vast chasm between his responsibilities as a father and the complicated shadows of his past. The amplitude of his feelings toward his brother loomed like a monolith in his mind, blocking out the clarity he desperately sought. As the twins helped unearth assorted treasures from their family's past, the playful energies in the attic seemed to contrast starkly with the turmoil brewing within him. "Look at this!" Ella exclaimed, brandishing an old baseball glove that had belonged to Jake's father. With a sense of nostalgia, Jake grasped it as memories flooded in a past filled with innocent play and fleeting joys. It was both a gift and a curse. The children's laughter resurrected long-buried summer afternoons, yet reminded him of the brothers who had drifted apart. consumed by resentment and neglect. As he adjusted the glove in his hands, uncertainty rippled through him. Would this moment of reconnection with his daughter strengthen his resolve to face Mark? Or would it simply highlight his own inadequacies as a brother? With each sneeze of dust and each laugh exchanged between the twins, the weight of his dual obligations only intensified. "Can we play with it, Daddy?" Zoe's hopeful plea jolted him back from self-reflection, refocusing his attention firmly on the present. But as he indulged their whim, the hypocrisy of the situation gnawed at him. How could he revel in childhood innocence while harboring secrets that threatened to shatter it? "Okay, let's sneak outside first," Jake proposed, clenching the glove tightly. The idea of orchestrating a new tradition playing baseball just like he had with Mark surfaced. It felt like a lifeline thrown into his tumultuous memories, offering a chance to rewrite history, if only a little. Despite the impending darkness surrounding his brother's situation, Jake felt an urge to bring light to his daughter's faces through moments like this. Once outside, the sun warmed their backs, illuminating the field where generations of his family had shared laughter and love. He pitched the ball gently, working slowly to ease his daughters into the rhythm. As Jake watched them chase the ball, his chest swelled with pride and something else, an inkling that he could still find joy amid chaos. Yet, each time he threw the ball, his mind traced back to Mark's circumstances like a moth drawn to a flame, igniting old fears and unresolved issues. What would Mark think of this moment? He'd never know this kind of joy, would he? Yet Jake knew, in the depths of his heart, that Mark's choices had led them here. Life paths diverged, and their reunion relied on truth and unfurling of the tangled mess that was their family history. As Ella glided across the grass, catching the last play of sunlight, Jake felt the stark contrast of familial love that could so easily flip towards bitterness. The baseball glove linked him to not only the joyful past but also a painful reality he couldn't ignore. Suddenly, Zoe stopped mid-run, eyes wide and mouth agape. "Daddy, can we ask someone to join us?" she suggested innocently, her words hitting him like a freight train. "Mark, can we call Uncle Mark? He would love this." A fresh wave of anguish washed over Jake, like icy water jarring him from the warmth of family moment. Mark had been distant during their last encounter, haunted by demons Jake had long since buried. But perhaps this was the very thing that could pull them back together. Or would this invitation dredge up the undercurrents of animosity he'd tried to heal? Jake's voice faltered, the thought whirling in his head like a tornado. He was not prepared to reveal Mark's struggles to the girls, nor was he ready to confront the unfiltered emotions that swelled within him. The duality of his existence loomed again, but now the flames of possibility flickered with hope. "Let me think about it, okay?" he finally managed, feeling a twinge of responsibility tether him. Jake turned to the horizon where the fading sun cast long shadows, reminders of the burdens he carried, but also of connections that longed to be rekindled. What would happen if he confronted Mark now? Would their fractured bond solidify with honesty? Or would the scales tip further into despair? The decision gnawed at him, as heavy and tangible as the baseball glove still in his grasp. With every passing moment, Jake felt that time was running out. The shadows of unspoken truths were moving closer, while the laughter of his daughters tugged at his heart. Could he embrace the risk of facing Mark and, more importantly, the man that he needed to become? His heart raced as he turned to where his daughters stood waiting, eyes glinting with happiness. In that moment, clarity struck, including the understanding that moving forward meant confronting the past within, even if it meant exposing his vulnerabilities. Little did he know, the confrontation awaited just around the bend, challenging Jake to decide whether to reach out to Mark or remain in the safety of silence, unraveling the balance of familial ties forged through love, loss, and inevitable resilience. The baseball glove felt heavier now than it did moments ago, as Jake wrestled with the implications of Zoe's innocent suggestion. An unexpected urgency flickered within him, merging the playful laughter of his daughters with the tumultuous echoes of his relationship with Mark. The idea of inviting his brother to play was like tossing a match into a powder keg. It could spark joy or ignite long-simmering tensions. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jake took a step back, assessing the weight of that decision. The more he thought about it, the clearer the reflection of his own childhood became. He had once been part of a duo, brothers bound by shared secrets and play. Now that bond lay frayed, a relic of a past consumed by bitterness and regret. "Hey, girls," Jake called out, banishing the dark tendrils of self-doubt. "Let us head inside and have some dinner, okay?" They nodded with delight, clearly unfazed by the earlier interruption. This was the moment he had long sought, to be a consistent and nurturing figure above all else. Yet, the looming specter of Mark dangled just out of reach, a conundrum he felt compelled to unravel. Between serving plates and wiping sticky hands, Jake's mind twisted with realizations. The truth about Mark's struggles had always been buried beneath a surface of familial loyalty and grudges. Yet wasn't it his duty, as a brother, to confront this truth? He had spent too long shrouded in silence, allowing guilt and resentment to poison their relationship. What if he could model for his daughters the importance of forgiveness and vulnerability? After dinner, Jake excused himself, taking a moment in the solitude of his bedroom. He paced, heart racing as he mentally rehearsed what he might say to Mark. Would he frame it around the memories of playing ball as children? Or perhaps he would simply seek understanding, untangling the threads of that painful past. He paused at the window, bathed in the bluish hues of dusk, pondering how he had let fear shape his narrative. Could he allow his daughters to see him reaching out to their uncle, even if it was weighed down by uncertainty? Wouldn't they comprehend the value of familial ties forged through struggle? Leaving the room, Jake found Ella doodling quietly at the kitchen table. She looked up just as he entered, her pencil still, eyes sparkling with innocence. "Daddy, can we call Uncle Mark?" she asked, her tone light yet certain, as though she understood more than her years indicated. Her question hung in the air like the aroma of the dinner that had just been served. It felt like a final push, demanding he embrace that confrontation. Jake glanced over to where Zoe was blissfully humming a tune, blissfully unaware of the internal strife swirling within him. In them, he saw a flash of hope, guiding him through murky waters. He could be better not just for his brother, but for himself. "All right, girls," he said, his voice steadier than it felt. "Give me a moment to gather my things." He would start this journey toward reconnecting with Mark, a chance to bridge their fractures. They all deserved that. As he pulled out his phone, the gravity of the moment enveloped him. Would Mark pick up? Would he even want to engage? Yet pressing the screen felt like a doorway unlocking. This was no longer just about Jake. It was about confronting shadows, seeking light for his daughters. The call rang, each tone strumming a nerve, a reminder of much more than simple kinship. It held weight, the gravity of mistakes, regrets, and the promise of redemption. As he waited to hear his brother's voice on the other end, a knot of anxiety twisted in his gut, made jagged edges softer. At that moment, Jake realized something crucial. Sometimes, the echoes of our past signal the very change we seek in our present. It was time, not just to confront Mark, but to claim the integrity he had long ignored in himself. The line connected, bringing Mark's voice through, and with it, a rush of anticipation and dread. "Hey, it's Jake." Would the conversation head toward healing or further fracture? The long journey was about to begin. With more at stake than just brotherly love, an awakening of transformation awaited. The voice on the other end was cautious, a familiar baritone layered with years of strained silences and misunderstandings. "Jake? Is this really you?" Mark's question echoed through Jake, stirring old emotions he had kept neatly packaged away. "Yeah, it's me. Can we talk?" The simplicity of his request felt monumental, yet the words trembled on his tongue. He feared the weight of what unfolded in that conversation would either lift the burdens they had carried or pile them back on. "Sure, what's up?" Mark replied, the guarded tone evident. Jake sensed the hesitation, a wary bridge between two estranged brothers. "Life has been hectic." Jake fumbled, his heart racing. He was negotiating the terms of vulnerability, a currency foreign yet necessary. "I've been thinking about us, about how we've let so much come between us." There was silence, a long pause that expanded uncomfortably, wrapping around Jake like a shroud. He braced himself for Mark's response, unwilling to retreat behind the comforting walls of their past animosity, even though every instinct screamed to protect himself. "Yeah, I guess we have." Mark's voice softened, the recognition of shared pain flickering through the airwaves. "But what has changed? You called me out of the blue. Jake inhaled sharply, preparing to face the tempest of emotions. A lot has happened with the girls. They've been asking about you. I think it's time we try to reconnect. Play catch, or something. Mark's silence met this, heavy with the weight of years spent apart. Jake could almost hear the gears turning in his brother's mind. It occurred to him that this moment was not merely about rekindling their bond, but about embracing the vulnerability that came with it. I don't know, Jake. It's complicated. You know that, Mark finally said, his voice tightening. Jake's jaw clenched. I do, but I can't let the past keep defining us. It's not just about us anymore. It's about the girls. Defiance ignited within him, urging him to stand firm against the old resentments that had long clouded their relationship. Maybe we should meet somewhere, talk things out face to face, Mark suggested, though uncertainty tinged his tone. This was neither a dismissal nor a full embrace, but it was a crack in the armor that Jake yearned to break open. Great, Jake replied, exhilaration warming him. How's tomorrow afternoon at the park? Let us see, Mark said thoughtfully, an acknowledgement of commitment in his voice. I could swing by, but let us not digress, Jake interjected gently. I want to keep the focus on building something new, so no more distractions. Okay? After some back and forth, they solidified the plan. As Jake ended the call, he leaned back in his chair, unexpected liberation swirling inside him. He had initiated a tiny yet significant step toward healing, not just for Mark but for himself and his daughters. The following hours slipped by in a blur of anxious anticipation. He busied himself by organizing the girls' toys, half-heartedly arranging things, but his mind drifted to tomorrow. What would the meeting hold? Would Mark be receptive to forgiveness? And how could Jake ensure meaningful engagement with his brother, especially in front of his daughters? While preparing dinner later that day, he could feel the tight knot in his chest loosen slightly. He was acting upon an inherent need for growth, tethered to the very nature of being a brother, a father, and now, a hopeful architect of new beginnings. As the evening settled in and his daughters finished their bedtime stories, Jake felt a new resolve settle. He stood in the doorway to their room, staring into the soft flicker of the night light. For too long, he had balled up emotions like old scar tissue. It was time to peel away the layers, starting with Mark, forging the transparency his girls needed to witness in order to understand the formidable strength that came from confronting one's past. Yet as the night unfolded, a deep-seated tension bubbled to the surface. What if Mark rejected him again? What if tomorrow turned out to be an exercise in futility? Jake took a deep breath, grounded by the weight of his daughter's breaths in the stillness. The journey ahead was fraught with uncertainty, both a potential rebirth and a risk of further heartbreak. But that's the nature of growth. You must confront shadows before stepping into the light. With that realization, he felt a different kind of fear settle in, as though he had just stepped into the precipice of a life-changing moment. As he prepared for bed, a new question crept into his mind, one he couldn't shake. What would he do if, come morning, the conversation did not unfold the way he had envisioned? Would he have the courage to continue pushing forward? He fell asleep that night clutching the hope that he might emerge from that conversation with a sense of clarity about himself, about Mark, and about the future they could forge if only they dared to confront it together. Morning dawned with a hesitant light streaming through the windows, illuminating the chaos of the living room strewn with toys, remnants of the girls' laughter echoing faintly in Jake's mind. As he brewed coffee, he replayed every detail of the previous night, from the phone call to his mounting apprehension for the impending meeting. It wasn't just about reconnecting with Mark. It represented a pivotal crossroads in his life, a chance to create something enduring for his daughters. He prepared breakfast with methodical precision, but his mind slipped and slid through layers of uncertainty. He meticulously plated waffles, each piece reflecting his anxious state, and drenched them in syrup as if the sweetness might somehow mask the bitterness of past estrangements. Once the girls were fed and happily distracted with their favorite cartoons, Jake took a moment to breathe deeply, grounding himself in the present. Today was about growth, his own and theirs. He swiped a hand over the table to collect his thoughts as he sat down, facing the challenge ahead. What would he say if Mark opened the floodgates of old wounds? What if Mark asked for forgiveness he wasn't prepared to grant? In the quiet, his phone buzzed, jolting him from his spiraling thoughts. It was a text from Mark, confirming the meeting. The moment felt electric, tethering Jake to a responsibility that transcended his own emotions. He knew he needed to approach this reconciliation mindfully and with intention. Time slipped away faster than he intended. Before he knew it, the hour arrived, and Jake felt a mix of excitement and fear pummel him. He dressed in jeans and a simple, comfortable shirt, choosing a look that did not portray the seriousness of the situation but rather a casual openness. He wanted his brother to feel at ease, as if they were stepping into a familiar space despite the chasm of their past. As he drove to the park, Jake mentally rehearsed his objectives. The conversation needed to begin with an authentic acknowledgement of the pain, but he also had to communicate that he was ready to build something new, not a fragile bridge but a robust one made from shared experiences and newfound understanding. He could not afford to let fear dictate his actions. This was about establishing a foundation that would benefit his daughters as much as it did them. Arriving early, Jake strolled around, his heart racing with each passing minute. The vibrant greens of the park contrasted sharply with the weight of his internal struggle. He caught sight of a father playing catch with his son, and for a brief moment, a pang of envy washed over him. He wanted that light moments of connection and joy, but the specter of conflict overshadowed it all. He spotted Mark approaching, his expression unreadable. The tension that had built up in Jake's chest squeezed tighter as their eyes met, but he reminded himself of the commitment he made to do this for himself, for his brother, and for his daughters. As they took their seats on a nearby bench, Jake swallowed hard, keenly aware of the weight of their history. The moment felt like a precipice, their shared past merging at this pivotal point in time. He could only hope for the courage to leap forward, instead of retreating into old habits. Yet, even as they sat together, silhouettes framed by the dappled sunlight, an unexpected thought unsettled him. What if Mark was still the same person who had hurt him all those years ago? Jake, Mark began, his voice low and hesitant. An opening. Would he seize it? The question loomed larger than their entire past. Jake steeled himself. The time had come to face it all. How do we start? He asked, his voice steady yet tinged with vulnerability. What would the conversation reveal? The enormity of the moment pressed down on him like a weight, but deep inside, he felt the flicker of possibility beginning to ignite. Mark shifted on the bench, visibly grappling with his own feelings as if he were testing the waters before diving in. I think we start by acknowledging that we both messed up, he said, the seriousness of his tone pulling Jake deeper into the moment. The admission struck a chord within Jake. It was an unexpected beginning to the discussion he had feared for so long. He had anticipated deflection or blame, but here was Mark, standing bare before him. Messing up is putting it mildly, Jake replied, trying to keep his tone light yet aware that sarcasm could easily cloud the real issue. We lost a lot of time. Silence hung in the air like an unsaid apology. Jake, allowing himself a moment to sit with this realization, felt his heart rate steady itself. With every second that ticked by, he realized he was listening for more than just words. He was looking for sincerity. True, Mark concurred. His gaze drifted to the ground. But I want to change that. Jake's instinct leaned toward skepticism. A memory surfaced, uninvited years spent in silence. The letters never sent. The phone calls avoided. Yet still, he found his fingers gripping the edge of the bench, an unconscious signal that he was teetering on the brink of trust. What does that even mean? He pushed, curiosity tinged with hope. How do we move forward? It starts with communication, I think, Mark said, finally looking up. I'm sorry, Jake. I'm sorry for everything, he added, his voice cracking with emotion. And I know that's just words, but I want to meet your daughters. I want to be part of their lives, if you'll let me. The request sent a wave of unease through Jake. It was one thing to consider reconciliation for themselves. The stakes elevated exponentially when his daughters were introduced into the equation. They were his responsibility, and the idea of exposing them to more uncertainty sent tremors of anxiety through him. Could he really let them spend time with the brother who had walked away from their family? Meeting them is a big step, Jake managed cautiously. Do you really think you're ready for that? I have to be, Mark replied, his tone now firmer. For my peace and for theirs. They deserve to know their uncle, the one they never got to meet. The sincerity in Mark's eyes sparked something within Jake, a flicker of trust, perhaps, or the possibility of something better. Not just for themselves but for the girls who were unaware of the adult dilemmas swirling around them. Slowly, Jake realized that this wasn't just about unearthing past grievances. It was about crafting a future that mattered. "What if I say yes?" Jake asked, his voice steadying as hope drowned out his fear. "What's your plan?" "I'll show up regularly, not just when I feel like it. I want to be part of their lives, truly part of them," Mark replied, an intensity in his eyes that belied his earlier hesitation. "We both need to heal, Jake. This is about rebuilding trust. Can we share that responsibility?" For the first time since their meeting began, Jake felt the rising tide of possibility wash over him. The prospect of small family gatherings, laughter echoing through the house, a tangible connection, drew him in. The shadows of doubt that had loomed large began to dissipate like mist, revealing the clearer path ahead. "We start slow, but if I see even a hint of that old behavior, it's over," Jake warned, his voice firm but the tension in his chest easing fractionally. "Understood," Mark nodded, the weight of the moment palpable between them. As they sat there, voices intertwining like vines seeking to anchor themselves in something solid, Jake contemplated the implications of their conversation. This chapter represented vulnerability, not just for him, but a shared leap of faith into the unknown. He could already envision the joyful chaos that would come from creating new memories. He just needed to believe it. Yet, as the shadows grew longer and light began to dim, a nagging uncertainty tugged at him. What if this was another false start? What if Mark faltered again? "Let's see how it goes," Jake finally said, cautious optimism emerging as he took a leap into uncharted territory. "We'll take it one step at a time." With the glimmer of hope sprouting between them, they stood up from the bench, the weight of the past not vanquished but reshaped, as they walked into a future teeming with potential. A sudden thought knocked on the door of Jake's mind. Was he truly prepared to unearth the emotional depths of family ties he had buried so deep? This question lingered as they left the park, queries of trust echoing louder than ever before. The next few weeks unraveled with a rhythm that felt refreshingly new yet strangely familiar. Jake stood in his kitchen, watching the twins giggling over breakfast, their laughter permeating the walls with light. He marveled at how a single decision to reconnect with Mark had begun to reshape the landscape of their lives. Dinner had become an open gathering, the stories shared around the table bursting with warmth and hope, slowly weaving both families together. Each visit from Mark was carefully orchestrated, infusing their world with a mix of spontaneity and stability. The tension Jake had once harbored began to melt away as he observed the unwavering commitment his brother exhibited. Unlike before, he was learning the significance of presence as a form of love. Mark attended every little family event, courageously submerging himself in the girls' universe of wonders, dance recitals, park playdates, and even movie nights. He embraced them with an open heart, allowing Jake to witness a man transformed. One Saturday, as the sun poured through the kitchen windows and warmed the tiled floor, they sat together organizing photos, all images of joy capturing fleeting moments of happiness. Mark reached for a particular snapshot of the three of them at a baseball game, and nostalgia washed over Jake. "Remember that?" Mark chuckled, his voice nostalgic yet humble. "You had a terrible throw." Jake's laughter joined Mark's, reverberating across the room. "In my defense, I had a lot going on, including trying to deal with an aloof brother," he jested. "You've seen the best of me, and the worst," Mark replied, his sincerity breaking through the light-hearted banter. "Those days felt different," Jake nodded, weighing the acknowledgement of their shared past against the new memories they were crafting. "But today feels different too," he said firmly. "This is progress." It was more than just forgiveness. It was an authentic evolution. Embracing these connections taught Jake vital lessons. He learned how to place trust in not only his brother but also in himself. As he looked at the twins playing in the background, imagination spilling forth into the atmosphere, clarity gripped him. He was doing enough as a father. One day, after an invigorating conversation with Mark about future plans and family dynamics, Jake decided it was high time he acknowledged his own professional journey. He had always felt stifled as a teacher, underappreciated and worn down by the day-to-day grind. Inspired by Mark's rekindled existence, He began to pursue additional credentials professional development courses that would elevate both his pedagogical skills and personal confidence. Driven, he completed a graduate course in child psychology, realizing the power of understanding behavior and development was a natural extension of the love he had for Emma and Lily. Months passed in which a shift occurred. Jake felt the confidence solidify within him. His efforts had begun to garner recognition. The principal called him into her office one afternoon. "Jake, I've been observing your passion and the innovative teaching methods you're bringing to our students. I think it's time we appoint you as the lead for our next curriculum initiative." Stunned, Jake stared, soaking in her words. "Really? I can lead?" The skepticism brewed momentarily, only to be replaced by satisfaction as he accepted the opportunity. "Yes," she said, a smile gracing her lips. "You've earned it." As he left her office, a wave of exhilaration surged through him. For the first time in years, Jake felt recognized for his competence. Achieving this role wasn't merely a professional win. It symbolized the hard work he had put into himself, affirming that he was indeed enough for his daughters and his career. On the day of the initiative's announcement, Jake stood before a room full of teachers, pride swelling in his chest. "Today is not just about new lessons," he began, envisioning his daughters cheering him on. "It's about discovering who we can be when we choose to nurture every child's potential. Just like when we learn to do it for our families." His voice echoed with conviction, reverberating through the walls. No longer was he the frayed brother or the weary father caught in survival mode. Instead, he was solidified. Here was a man who had taken tangled pasts and woven them into a rich tapestry of future possibilities. The twins were witnessing not just a father but a version of Jake who embraced vulnerability, tradition, and growth. As Mark sat in the back of the room, a proud smile illuminated his face, and Emma and Lily exchanged knowing glances. Jake's heart swelled with joy, realizing this journey wasn't meant to be taken alone. Each branch of familial connection reinforced his climb to achieving all he had set out to do. In the bustle that followed his announcement, Jake recollected the arduous path that had led him here. The burden of their family history had not vanished, but it had transformed, urging him towards introspection and action. Each step forward intertwined the past and present, breathing life into shared experiences. The unpredictable nature of family and growth had become part of the dance of life. As lessons of empathy and acceptance took the stage, strong roots now anchored themselves deeper, leading him to cement the familial bonds that could weather any storm. Jake was no longer just surviving, he was thriving. And as he sat with his family later that evening, listening to their laughter resonate throughout the home, he couldn't help but acknowledge a deep fulfillment. Everything had come full circle, and suddenly it felt like this was merely the beginning. Embrace your journey today. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand how essential it is to support the channel.